Welcome to the Short Funk Podcast. I'm Tom Barbalet. So before you stop the recording, before you go to another Short Funk or just stop your podcast player, I'm going to try and talk about this in a non-technical fashion. I hope eyes will not glaze over. I finished work at about 10:30 last night. This is a Saturday. And I had a bit of additional time on a new computer, and I thought, why don't I explore the Noble Ape source repository? Okay. You might already be thinking, turn off the recorder, but please just humor me. Give me a few seconds of your time. What I did was I found 4 points in the Noble Ape simulation in recent times, like from 2012 through to the present time, the past 4 years, basically, where there was something interesting, something worthwhile, and something that was part of the simulation that I might need in the future, but also was just like a really good value-added thing to the simulation. It made it nicer and gave more possibilities for the future. The first was using native graphics. I won't talk too much about this. I don't want to bore you. The second was associated with genealogy, which obviously is something that interests me currently. The third was associated with skeleton in the simulation, like actually modeling the skeletons of the noble apes, the blood flow, all this kind of stuff. And the final thing was a project that Bob Mottram started, but never continued on with, which is something that I want to return to. The native graphics is a huge burden to the simulation. The fact that you can't get it on iPad and iPhone, these kind of things, is primarily because I created my own graphics in 2004, called Ocelot. And that takes a lot of processing power, too much processing power. And really what I should do here is just use the industry standard OpenGL. And I created a version that did that about 2012. And because of a difficult technical problem that I decided not to tackle at the time, literally how the land is described quickly, so this can be rendered quickly, I pulled that code out. It was just code that wasn't being maintained, got rid of it. Genealogy, Bob Mottram added a lot of code, and unfortunately the code that remains at Bob Mottram's is probably about a fifth of that code. The primary reason was when Bob Mottram went on to do other things, he got a day job, I had to maintain a lot of the code, and a lot of the code had bugs. You can never tell how many bugs code has. It just has major bugs initially, and then you work through them and you try to work your way through them. And with the genealogy, less so. It just wasn't in a format that I liked, and I thought, well, am I going to maintain it? And I did some churn, and after about 6 months, it was removed. The skeletal and vascular simulation with the Noble Ape is just a beautiful thing. There's also a respiratory simulation that Bob added, yet none of these things were particularly stable, and all of these things required maintenance, which required me to get really deeply and fundamentally probably rewrite each of these things in such a way that I could maintain the code, but also in such a way that I could test the code and make sure that the code was still working correctly. In the case of the respiratory simulation, it was completely unstable after a period of time, and unfortunately, the Noble Ape simulation can't have those kind of simulation components. Like, it could have a reset, it could have a way of describing these things, just can't have them in the long term. So what do? You create a harness around this so you can test it over short term, make sure that it's stable. If it's unstable, find ways of fixing that. The skeletal simulation crashed frequently, like really frequently, in terms of when I got the skeletal simulation out to have a look at it, crashed every time. And part of that was because Bob combined both the rendering of the skeleton and the actual design of the skeleton together. I think you separate these two, make the rendering of the skeleton through this OpenGL thing, the graphics method, and then you just concentrate on the good stuff, which is not the graphical part, it's the other part. And the graphical part, unfortunately, is the unstable part for this. The other part seems to be stable. So that's an easy win. Monkey Mind, I'm not really sure about. I've not really invested a long period of time on it, but I've got to say thumbs up to Bob Mottram. I've got to say I really like the stuff that Bob Mottram has done. There have been certain problems with it, but these are problems that I can fix. They're problems that take time, but ultimately they're things where the code can be added, can be used going forward. And unfortunately, I think I was going through some degree of nihilism, perhaps associated with the conclusion to Biota, perhaps associated with a variety of things. And I had an overabundance in cutting stuff through this period of time. And reflecting back, I think that was the wrong decision. I think there are things that I could have done, particularly in terms of rewrites, to stabilize some of this stuff. Maybe all of it. And in that light, it was wrong to remove this work that Bob had done quite laboriously. It was, good 2.5, 3 years worth of work that Bob put in. And the issues that I found with the code were less than the work that he put in. So I need to put more work into stabilizing it, perhaps rewriting it, getting it into a form where it's maintainable, but also where I can utilize the work that Bob did. Too much of Noble Ape has been, let's try this experiment. If the experiment doesn't work, don't put it in. Or if there's a problem here, don't put it in. Or leave it in some unmaintained state. I've got to change that somehow. And I went back and I looked at other ideas and other things, but it's just nice to have known that at one stage OpenGL worked. The graphics kind of worked to a certain extent. One stage there was a skeletal model, a relatively and actually very rich and detailed skeletal model, including a vascular system. That might be worth maintaining. Genealogy, just for a fun point, worth maintaining and worth thinking about, actually. Like, how do you solve these problems better? And future work of Bob Mottram, easy to adopt, easy to add. I hope this hasn't been too technical. Tom Barbalet in San Jose, signing out.